Guys, it's as if the Kansas City Chiefs' entire season had been geared towards this part of the schedule, isn't it? Wow, wow, wooey, the Kansas City Chiefs with their most convincing win of the season over a team that was in contention for the number one seed in the AFC side of the playoff bracket just 11 days ago. The most convincing win of the season from pillar to post. The Kansas City Chiefs dominated this game. I have 5 thoughts just as a quick recap on the game, a quick review of the game. I will be back tomorrow with more in-depth thoughts on things, but here's where I want to start. This Kansas City Chiefs team is peaking at exactly the right time. Have the Kansas City Chiefs looked better than this all season? I contend that they have not, as it looks like I have a mohawk. They have not looked better than this all year. They have looked decent all year. They have looked vulnerable all year. Indeed, they are still vulnerable. They have never looked this good, not this year. In fact, there is one statistic that I will bring up in this video that suggests perhaps that the most important part of this team hasn't looked this good in quite some time, but we'll get to that in a moment. This is exactly what the Kansas City Chiefs have hoped to do during this year. The Kansas City Chiefs have been bit and piecing things together all season long, and it looks frustrating at certain parts of the process. But they're not going to be a finished product on week 1, and you don't want them to. You don't want that. That's what happened when the Kansas City Chiefs allegedly lost a Super Bowl. Remember, they came out firing on all cylinders several times early in the year. Just ask the New Orleans Saints this season what it's like to be very, very good, very, very early in the NFL season. It's a very, very long NFL season, especially now. I will take a moment to get on a high horse and protest the NFL and their rules about the roster and activations, so long as it looks like the NFL is gearing up to have an 18-game schedule. You cannot have 53-man rosters. You should not have 5 designated players that have to be inactive during the week. You should have 60-man rosters, and everyone should be available every week of the season. Otherwise, you will get yourself into absolute trouble and misery late in the year. Anyway, that is a small talking point, but the Chiefs have looked better than they have all year. This is 2 weeks in a row now that if the Kansas City Chiefs had their foot on the pedal the last half of the fourth quarter, they easily could have scored 30 points on a playoff team. On a playoff team, they could have scored 30 points 2 weeks in a row, effortlessly, it seems. So, do they look good? Yes, but they do not look as if they're trying particularly hard. They are not taking give-me stuff. They are not trying to force the defense into win or lose situations. They are not taking too many deep shots down the field. There is no air of desperation to this team. They are just matter-of-fact and business-oriented and peaking at the exact right time. The number 2 talking point here worth talking about, Xavier Worthy is now officially a weapon. And all it took was another tiny fast guy in the offense. I have to sit here and say mea culpa. I was wrong. I apologize. I didn't know how an NFL offense was going to utilize 2 guys who weigh about the same as each one of Chris Jones' legs in a single offense and make it work. I just didn't know. I had no idea it was going to be this effective. I had no idea it was going to look this good. I had no idea that it was going to take the offense from sort of dawdling down the field every once in a while to hit a field goal to being an offense that could score 30 points at will on playoff opponents with good defenses By the way, these are not two teams that are sneaking into the playoffs because they have phenomenal quarterback play, the Texans and the Steelers. These are teams that have had formidable defenses during the season, and the Kansas City Chiefs, with this, you almost have to say new offense. You almost have to, because the offense did not look like this. The players that were on the field, maybe they couldn't, obviously, they couldn't do what Hollywood Brown does as Hollywood Brown, but were they capable of running the same routes? And even if they were not the one who was catching the ball, having the same results as a non-receiving threat on a receiving route? I don't know. But guys, this does not look like the same team, and Xavier Worthy looks like the player that everyone was kind of hoping he would be coming into the season. Remember all of the hubbub about how could the Bills do this? How could the Bills possibly have let the Kansas City Chiefs do this? How do you just give away that pick for that player and that offense with that quarterback? How does this happen? Well, it looks like that's panning out. The last time Patrick Mahomes threw for 300 yards was on 11/29. It was November 29th. The last time he threw for 3 touchdowns was 11/24, November 24th. The last time Patrick Mahomes threw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns was October 22nd, 2023. The time before that was January 1st, 2023, which means it was the 2022 NFL season. This offense is moving. It looks better. It looks different. It looks complete. It looks like NFL defenses just don't have quite the right answer at the right time for this offense right now. The next thing I want to talk about is Merry Christmas. Nik Rios had 112 yards. All-purpose yards, return yards, but I'll take that as a win for one of the fan base's biggest underdog crushes. The only thing that would have been better in this game is the only thing that could have made this game better, I guess I should say, is if Carson Steele had had a rushing touchdown or a passing touchdown for that matter. I don't care as long as it was a touchdown. But Nik Rios finding his way to 112 yards of productivity. This is a guy that we have been rooting for a very long time now, and at the end of his second season on an NFL roster, even if that NFL roster designation was the practice squad, his second year, the very last game that will matter, he is getting some yards, and it's Christmas. Shouldn't be negative, but I think Nik Rios finally renders Sky Moore obsolete. I know the guy got surgery. We shouldn't talk about him, shouldn't talk negative about him. He's injured, whatever, but the positive aspect of this is, I think that what you're doing here with this is you are saying there is a path forward for your special teams. Sky Moore does not have to be a part of that. Sky Moore does not have to be on the offense. You're looking at Mecole Hardman now, probably, a guy who I like Mecole. He reached his peak very early in the NFL and has had diminishing returns since then. Got some rings, right? Absolutely rooting for Mecole, but I think that he's just not someone that you want to have to depend on. You don't want to have to rely on that. So the emergence of Nik Rios in the return game says that, hey, we don't have to rely on that here. We have options, and I think those options will be explored in the offseason. The number 4 thing here is this. This win is obvious. I mean, I can write the headlines right now. I can take Mike Florio and just sort of chat GPT what it is that is going to flow from his incredibly, probably sticky little fingers. This win will be undersold in the media because it puts the Steelers into a 3-game skid. But do not forget that this Steelers team just 11 days ago was one of the teams that could have stolen the number 1 seed from the number 1 seed's rightful owner, the Kansas City Chiefs. Just 11 days ago. Just 11 days ago, this team was primed and ready to challenge for the number 1 seed along with the Buffalo Bills. And now, that is not going to happen. In fact, the Kansas City Chiefs this season, they're having a very sneaky good year. Oh, all of the one-possession victories, but they were victories. You're the worst pirate I've ever heard of, but you have heard of me, right? It's that same type of deal. All of those little one-possession victories, look at them now. Because one of those teams, one of the teams the Kansas City Chiefs have beaten is the Steelers. That's a playoff team. Another team the Kansas City Chiefs have beaten is the Houston Texans. That's a playoff team. They've also beaten the Ravens. Well, that's a playoff team. They've also beaten the Chargers and the Broncos. Right now, the Broncos are a very likely favorite to be the final playoff team in the AFC side of the bracket. That is 6 games against AFC playoff foes. They've won all of them. They lost to the Bills. The guys who are playing for the number 2 seed in the AFC, I believe they have wrapped up the number 2 seed now. I haven't looked at it, but the Kansas City Chiefs securing the 1 seed, I believe, makes the Buffalo Bills the definitive number 2 seed. But there's also the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs have beaten both the Falcons and the Buccaneers, and someone has to win the NFC South, regardless if they all decide to just go home. A winner will be declared there, and the Kansas City Chiefs have beaten them. That's 7 wins over playoff teams. Well, let's take a step back. The Kansas City Chiefs now have 15 wins. Half of the Kansas City Chiefs' wins have been over playoff teams at this point. So let the media go and cry. Let the media pretend that what the Kansas City Chiefs are doing is not impressive. Let the media pretend that the Pittsburgh Steelers are a terrible team or backing into the playoffs, yada, 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 yada. They've won 10 games. You don't accidentally win 10 games in the NFL. They're in the playoffs. You can accidentally get in the playoffs. There's 1 or 2 teams that accidentally get in the playoffs every year. The Saints or Buccaneers are going to be one of them this season. But that's 7 wins against playoff teams for the Kansas City Chiefs. There is no other way to wrap that. You can spit on it. You can kick it. You can pretend it doesn't exist. There's no other way to wrap it. The mainstream media is going to do their best to make it sound like it's not impressive. In fact, they won't mention it. They'll ignore it. They're not going to kick it. They're not going to spit on it. They're just going to ignore it. And that's fine. Because when the Kansas City Chiefs go on another run in the postseason, people are going to know that they have no idea what they're talking about. Every season now, it turns out this way. Here's the last thing I want to talk about, and it is the obvious point: home field. The Kansas City Chiefs have home field advantage in the playoffs. Now, the road to the Super Bowl in the AFC side of the bracket comes through Kansas City. What a wonderful thing to hear. This means, so here's the question. I was thinking about this morning. The Steelers didn't particularly scare me. Now, the short week and the holiday and everything, I didn't get the time to put together a preview and prediction video for this game. But the Steelers, honestly, didn't particularly scare me because I don't really think Russell Wilson has anything left at this point. And the Kansas City Chiefs have done pretty well against quarterbacks that don't have anything left. Russell Wilson gave him a run for their money last season, but I kind of thought that he's kicked the can too far down the road and his shoes are untied. But could the Steelers have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs? 1,000% they could have. Can the Kansas City Chiefs lose in the divisional round of the playoffs? 1,000% they could. They can't lose in the wild card round. That is for sure. The Chiefs, just to put this in context, the Chiefs could lose in the divisional round. We have no idea who the opponent is going to be. We know where it will be. We don't know who the opponent is going to be. It is late season football. All of the teams in the AFC side of the bracket are going to be good teams. It's possible the Colts sneak in at this point. It's still possible. It's possible the Bengals still sneak in. And there's someone else there. I don't think any of those scenarios are going to happen. I think it's going to be the Broncos. The Broncos were very close to beating the Chiefs earlier this season, so it's possible that in the divisional round of the playoffs, the Chiefs lose. Should that happen, that will be the worst season in Kansas City football in over half a decade. Just imagine that. Just think of that. Over half a decade, 6 seasons. That will be the worst season of football in that long. And the Kansas City Chiefs won more games in the regular season than ever in franchise history. And they still have an opportunity. I think it's possible Carson Wentz goes out there with the B team and beats the Broncos. It's possible. This team is 1 win from a 7th consecutive AFC championship game. This team is 2 wins from another Super Bowl appearance, 3 consecutive Super Bowl appearances. I don't know. Look, guys, I know a lot of words. I don't know the words for this. I don't have the words for this. Right now, however, the biggest deal for this team is that the final week of the season is going to be, for all intents and purposes, a bye week. For a team that very desperately needs some rest. Now, I don't think that it will in practice be a bye week. I think that we will see the starters for a little bit. And the reason I think that we will see the starters for at least a little bit is this. The Kansas City Chiefs have a bye week the first week of the playoffs. That is a lot of time to be off in the NFL. That is a lot of time to sit out. Chris Jones missed this week, so that would be effectively a month during which Chris Jones has not played NFL football. I think we will see a little bit from the starters against the Broncos in the final week of the regular season. But guys, outside of that, put together your wish list. You want Nico Remigio to get his first NFL reception? You want Carson Steele to get his first NFL touchdown? Do you want Ethan Driscoll to get on the field as an offensive tackle? There are so many things that are going to be worth watching for. Look, there were a lot of things worth watching in this game. The snap counts for this game are going to be very interesting, and this was a game that absolutely mattered. This was a game that absolutely mattered, and the Kansas City Chiefs came out and just put a whooping on a team that is perennially one of the toughest in the NFL. Mike Tomlin has that team angry every Sunday, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter one bit. The prospect of this final week of the season being a bye week, heading into a bye week, the first round of the playoffs, is foreboding, especially when you're talking about a team that has finally gotten all of its pieces back together. You're talking about a team that is finally making all of those timing routes look on time. Travis Kelce reemerged in the offense this week. I do not expect to see Travis Kelce at all next week. I think that is one starter that, regardless of what's going on, I think Travis Kelce probably will sit. He's played long. He doesn't need he doesn't need the reps. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the offensive line. Does DJ Humphries get out there? I mean, you're looking at DJ Humphries. What did he play? Top of my head, 30 snaps, I think, upon his return to football. And then he's out the next week and the next week. And they kind of have a bye the next 2 weeks. I think that we should, I think DJ Humphries should plan on getting some reps because you don't want that surprise in the divisional round of the playoffs that, oops, he's still not in the greatest football shape. Anyway, guys, that's just some 5 quick thoughts that I had on the Kansas City Chiefs upon this win against the Steelers. If you like this sort of thing, hitting a like button really does help me out as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.